Okay, there is a bunch of leaks coming out about what the next generation iPad Air, iPad Mini, iPad Pros are gonna be. And the honest truth here, guys, is I'm not a leaker. I don't have a voice in this ocean of people, all saying different things that are oftentimes contradicting each other. So in today's video, I'm basically pitching you guys a few hypotheticals. You, for yourself, will have to decide which leaks sound most believable as to what's actually going to happen in the future with the iPad lineup. But to be honest, I can't confidently predict these either, just because there's several people with decent track records saying different things. There's probably a good chance Apple doesn't even know what they're gonna do yet. They're experimenting, they're prototyping, and they can't decide how exactly they want to roll these out. So it's gonna get complicated, it's gonna get a little bit confusing, it's getting kind of weird, but either way, should all be good things, okay? We have good things to look forward to. iPad lineup is getting better. Let's begin. Alright, so first off, today's report was about the iPad Air 4, which sounds to be pretty much exactly what I was predicting it would be. Essentially just a dumbed-down version of the 2018 iPad Pro. We've talked about this a lot, but this report coming from mydrivers.com actually is saying the iPad Air 4 could end up being a lot better than I was originally anticipating it was going to be, just with the cost that it's going to come out later than expected, okay? There were several leakers earlier this year saying that by October or November of 2020, Apple was going to launch a new 11-inch, more affordable iPad, you know, not a Pro, but at the same time rocking Pro features like probably Apple Pencil 2 support, the smart connector on the back with the Magic Keyboard case, USB-C as well. But as we've gotten closer to October now, leakers seem to be changing their minds and saying, you know what, actually might not be coming out until March of 2021, but good news about it is it will actually be rocking stereo quad speakers, just like the iPad Pro. So originally, because the current iPad Air does not have stereo speakers, I thought that was going to be how they differentiate the Pro model from the Air model. But now it sounds like they want to give the same quad speakers that we have on the iPad Pro to the $500 iPad Air as well, which is awesome. I was really happy to see that. Also having storage configurations start at 128 gigabytes, which is also re-encouraging, just like the iPad Pro. This thing, of course, would be rocking USB-C, and kind of the bigger surprise to me is that it would be rocking the A14 chip. That same extremely powerful yet power-efficient chip going into the iPhone 12s this year, they want to bring that into a cheaper, more affordable iPad, which is kind of awesome. So this all sounds great. The only issue I have with this report is, wouldn't this absolutely butcher and cannibalize the sales of the iPad Pro? You know, currently with its A12Z chip, probably going to be outperformed by the A14 chip once that becomes available. And now you're telling me that the only difference between the iPad Pro entry level, you know, 11-inch size and this new iPad Air 4 is going to be one of them has 120 hertz and the other one doesn't? I could see a lot of people going with the iPad Air over the iPad Pro because, you know, some of us do care about 120 hertz, but a lot of us care more about money, you know, so if they figure out, hey, I can save money and just go with the Air 4, I think most people would do that. So obviously this ties into the next step of iPad leaks. Maybe they're waiting to launch the Air 4 until they can launch the next generation iPad Pro. So this is kind of part of the mydrivers.com leak that I don't have much faith in. He's suggesting that Apple is going to update the iPad Pros later this year in Q4, which in my opinion makes very little sense in comparison to when the last iPad Pros came out. It was just last March. That's still very recent. And Apple in previous years hasn't even updated the iPad Pro annually. Typically they do it every 18 months, so every year and a half or so. And now the idea that they would suddenly refresh it twice in the same year doesn't sound like Apple, and there were some earlier reports of this in the year, but again, updating the iPad Pro just so it can have A14X chip and 5G modems, and that's the only difference. I don't know, it doesn't sound believable to me, and this is what I talk about when I'm saying that there's other leakers that are contradicting themselves, because we've seen several reports prior and more recently suggesting that Apple's not going to update the iPad Pro until they can incorporate that mini LED display, which is kind of based on LCD technology but with much better saturation, contrast ratio, basically allowing OLED-like displays without actually using OLED, so you don't have to worry about burn-in, while still getting the great visuals that AMOLED can offer. And then once they incorporate mini LED, that's when they'll start doing the A14X chip and the 5G modems. That sounds far more believable to me because Apple doesn't like refreshing the iPad Pro twice in a single year. If anything, they'll just skip a whole year. Like all of 2019, nothing happened with the iPad Pro, not one thing. It was the exact same model from October 2018 all the way until March of 2020. And the other part of the iPad lineup that we've heard reports on, not so much recently, but just kind of a refresher for the sake of this is a all things iPad video. We have heard reports that Apple is working on a redesigned version of the iPad mini from Ming-Chi Kuo, who is pretty reliable. And he's saying this is going to be somewhere between 8.5 inches to 9 inches, and that it would probably be adopting, you know, the more bezel-less design of the iPad Pro with gesture control and Face ID, but sadly still rocking the Lightning port. I hate that part of the report. I don't like knowing that we're taking Lightning with us into 2021. Can we switch it over to USB-C, Apple? Come on. Anyway, it sounds like now, which you may have a hard time believing this, Apple essentially wants to refresh the entire iPad lineup from both the iPad Pros, the iPad Air 4, and the iPad mini all in March of next year. Does that sound believable to you guys? Because it sounds kind of cool. I mean, holy heck, that would be an amazing site refresh. We wake up to 3 new versions of iPads all at the same time, but maybe it makes sense that Apple wants to kind of pioneer the mini LED display technology and bring it to as many devices as possible all at once. So you got your 13-inch and 11-inch iPad Pros with these great new displays, and you're also introducing it with an 8 to 9-inch iPad mini that also has the premium hardware and the bezel-less design. And then somewhere in the middle, still at $500, you have the iPad Air 4, which is not rocking mini LED. It's still just the basic liquid retina display, but it will be $500, have an A14 chip, which is really fast, have stereo speakers, 128 gigs of storage, and it'll be compatible with the Magic Keyboard case and the Apple Pencil 2. So maybe they're hoping that by then, the new iPad Pros will seem appealing enough and exciting enough that people will want to opt for them, and then the Air 4 won't seem like such an amazing deal that it seems to us like right now. It's kind of hard to forget there's going to be a budget iPad in the middle of all this, so Apple's moving away from home buttons and Touch ID and moving forward on gestures and Face ID. But at the same time, in the corner, you know, we're going to have that A12 chip, $330 budget iPad that's getting released in a couple weeks. Everyone's going to be like, oh yeah, that thing exists. Oh well. But all I know is, after reading all these different reports about different iPads, it feels very safe for leakers to always say something is just like 8 to 9 months away because it sounds so distant. It's like, oh yeah, new iPad Pros, new iPad Air, all that's coming out in October. And then as we get closer, they're like, oh, did we say October? I meant March. Actually, it's not coming out till March. So I could totally see one of these leaks being totally wrong, and it ends up being like they don't release the new iPad Pro or the new iPad Air until Worldwide Developers Conference next year, because it doesn't sound like Apple to release this many iPads all at the same time. So someone's wrong. I don't know who's wrong here exactly, but it does sound like it would be quite the lineup that I could get behind. I'm kind of excited to see what kind of design characteristics the mini LED iPads have and how fast the A14X chip can be. So having the iPad Pros with their great new displays and the really fast performance, and then the iPad Air 4, which is like just the right amount of everything for everybody, $500, stereo speakers, Face ID, USB-C. You get all your today iPad Pro features in an affordable product. And then if you want the smaller iPad mini, you also get an OLED-like display, but you're still somehow stuck with the Apple Pencil Generation 1. Dang it, I wish they wouldn't have done that. And then if you really just don't care about any of that crap and you just want the cheapest iPad possible, you'll have the $300 one that it looks old and dated. Wow, that's a lot of changes to the iPad lineup that are rumored to happen in less than a year. So which iPad of the ones we talked about today are you most interested in? Which one would you guys want to pick up? Feel free to hit me up over on Twitter, join my Discord, and help me make sense of all these conflicting reports, because I have a hard time getting behind everybody. So this is your Apple Sheep here. I guess I'll see you in the next one.